Organizational Security, Part 3. Once upon a time, there was a 7-story building. It had a state-of-the-art server room and data center on the top floor of the building that served several customers. The room was climate controlled and it was just a state-of-the-art masterpiece. But directly above the server room was the roof of this 7-story building. And on the roof was a set of air conditioners that serviced this entire facility. Well, one time on an extremely hot weekend, the drain lines for the condensation from the air conditioners clogged up. The lines filled with water and then they burst. The water came through the roof into the attic. Once the water got into the attic, it worked its way to the lowest spot and then created a hole in the ceiling directly above the server room. Everything was toast in a matter of minutes. Well, you finally made it to the final nugget of this Security Plus series. And in the last part of this organizational security domain, we're going to look at just 3 topics. It's not going to be a really long nugget, so we're going to kind of finish off here with a short one. We're going to look here, first of all, at several different aspects of environmental controls. Then, we're going to talk more about social engineering and how important it is to train your employees about the dangers of social engineering. And then finally, I'm going to give you a survey of the Security Plus acronyms. Sound good? All right, let's finish off with a bang here. Now, we already talked earlier about power systems like surge protectors and power backups, talked about generators. There's also power conditioners that are active devices that isolate and regulate voltage in a building. Talked about backup power. Well, we're going to talk about some other types of environmental systems here in this final nugget. We're going to look first of all at HVAC, and many computer systems require that the humidity be controlled and that the temperature be controlled for reliable service. If you go into a data center or a server room, typically you've got environmental controls there. The larger the servers, the more equipment you have, the more drive arrays, you've got a considerable amount of heat being generated, and you need to go ahead and keep the temperature down so that you can keep the temperature cool and humidity low. This is especially true for older mainframe computers or mini computers. Most of your newer systems, however, are meant to operate in an office environment, so they have mechanisms built in to keep them cooler. But still, you add more devices, you're still going to have issues. So typically you'll have what we call zone-based air conditioning environments, which allow the environment plant to be turned off when the building isn't occupied. If you've got a computer room or a server room or a data center, it'll typically require a full-time environmental control system. And it should be monitored to prevent system's humidity level from dropping below 50%. If humidity levels get too low, then you expose yourself to electrostatic damage, electrostatic discharge. Along with these environmental concerns go issues like water and flood damage. Over here on the right-hand side, you can see a fire suppression system. All computer rooms, server rooms, and data centers should have fire detectors and moisture detectors. Remember earlier about my water pipe bursting scenario. And fire, of course, no matter how small the fire is, can cause damage to computer systems. Just the smoke particles enough can get lodged in the read-write heads of hard disks, can cause data loss. So remember fire suppression systems. The 3 critical components of any fire are heat, fuel, and oxygen. And so if any component of this triad is removed, a fire isn't possible. And so most fire suppression systems work on this concept of removing one of these 3 of the trilogy of fire, we can call it here. Something else to be aware of is the concept of shielding, and this is actually one of the specific objectives on the Security Plus exam as well. Shielding is the process of preventing electronic emissions from your computer systems from being used to, let's say, gather intelligence or do reconnaissance. It's to prevent outside electronic emissions from disrupting your information processing abilities. A lot of times in a fixed facility, like a computer center or a data center, the room will be surrounded with what's called a Faraday cage. And a Faraday cage can provide electronic shielding. And to test the Faraday cage, you'll do radio frequency emissions from the room to make sure that there's no information getting out of the cage. Two other considerations are EMI, electromagnetic interference, and RFI, radio frequency interference, like the microwave oven interfering with your wireless network, for example. These are two other environmental considerations. Things like lights and electromechanical objects, motors, these can cause EMI, which can cause a circuit overload. It can cause electrical component failure. It can cause electrical spikes. So make sure that all your signal lines are shielded properly and grounded to minimize electromagnetic interference. Also, devices that generate EMI should be as physically separated from cabling as is possible. A motor generating EMI can actually disrupt your data signals. So again, part of your organizational security may mean business continuity planning as it revolves around your environmental controls. Air conditioning, humidity, heat, reduction of EMI and RFI, proper shielding, Faraday cages, having fire suppression systems in place, fire alarms, smoke alarms, all these types of things. Now, earlier in this Nugget series, I talked about social engineering as one of the possible attacks on your organization. It can be done as a reconnaissance measure, as a precursor to a structured attack, and we understand that it's one of those things we have to be aware of and mitigate against. But CompTIA added it to this final organizational security domain because training and awareness and new hire orientation should focus its security training not so much on strong passwords and access controls and using your badges and those types of things, but it should also prepare you and help the employee understand the dangers and the prevalence of social engineering. And this is going to be concepts like phishing that we've already talked about, but need to be aware of this. It should be in their new hire education, understanding how phishing can be presented to them in email. Also, hoaxes that can be introduced, typically over the phone. It could be somebody calling and talking to an employee from outside the organization saying that they're actually an IT admin who needs a password or needs their personal information to update their database. It could be somebody disguising themselves as a janitorial service or a pest control service or a maintenance worker, any type of hoax that tries to masquerade their true identity as a nefarious character. It could be somebody simply piggybacking on somebody else's badge, credentials, getting physical access to a secure area by walking in and not using their badge. Hoaxes come in a wide variety of fashions. They're going to be delivered over email. They'll be delivered over instant messaging. They'll come over the telephone. They may even come in printed matter or over the fax machine. It can be someone even brazen enough to come up and perpetrate a hoax on the individuals who work at the front desk or even security personnel. There's also some social engineering called shoulder surfing. And this is when people like admins are working on their management workstations, or it could be a supervisor working at a station looking at, let's say, a spreadsheet of privacy information or salaries. Somebody walks by and strategically can see what's actually being shown on somebody's screen, surfing over their shoulder. They could even use magnification devices. They could even be in an office building across from you using a telescope or binoculars and actually looking at information that somebody else is looking at, maybe in the finance department or in the accounting department, on their monitor. So you want to have the computer monitors and laptops placed strategically, and you want to educate users about shoulder surfing. Make sure that individual users, when they log on with admin access, that they have some type of timeout, okay? Some type of console timeout. For example, as they log on to a multi-layer switch or a firewall, that if they're inactive for a certain amount of seconds, that they get timed out and logged out. Make sure that end users, and that means the CEO himself or herself, understands when they leave their computer station or they leave their laptop, make sure that they log off. Okay? Log off or actually shut the machine down. Another type of surfing is diving, and that is dumpster diving. And this is individuals coming in at night and just going through the trash and trying to find any type of information that can give them some reconnaissance about your organization. It could be the IP addressing scheme. It can be individuals' names. It can be personal information that can be used by somebody who makes a phone call at a later date perpetuating a hoax on that person. So they can derive all types of information. Maybe they're looking for credit card information. So again, we talked earlier about the importance of using services that shred documents. Well, make sure that nothing of a personal nature, nothing is being put in a dumpster that can be used. For example, don't throw old hard drives in a dumpster until they've been zeroed out or cleaned completely. And again, all of these things should be an active part of the security policy, as well as new hire orientation and ongoing end user education and awareness training. End user awareness training should be happening constantly on a quarterly basis, semi-annual basis. So the process of taking this information that I've delivered to you in this Security Plus series should be extracted specifically for the end user and then repackaged into some type of training that's given to them on a regular basis. No person should be hired until they go through a particular training and awareness process that they must complete, either web-based or paper-based, within the first 30 days of them being hired by the organization. So social engineering is a major aspect of organizational security, and again, it should be at the forefront of any new hire orientation. Now, what I want to give you as I finish up this Security Plus series is a set of acronyms. And again, acronyms are just abbreviations for terminology. And it's much more important to know what the acronym represents as far as informationally than to understand what it stands for. It's important to know what it stands for because what it stands for can lead to the definition or the explanation behind it. But it's very important for your success on the Security Plus exam to understand, maybe explain it in one or two sentences what each one of these acronyms represents. You might want to get some flashcards and make some flashcards for each one of these. Now, you can't print this screen in your particular PC environment, but what you can do is you can either write these down as notes as I go through them, and I'm just going to basically allow you to stop this nugget presentation so that you can do this, but you might want to also go up to CompTIA's website for Security Plus, and you can get their objectives for the Security Plus 2008 exam, and it'll have these acronyms in the back of that PDF file. So make sure that you have a general, within one or two sentences, definition of all of these acronyms. Things like DMZ, Demilitarized Zone, or BOTS, Network Robots, or ALE, Annualized Loss Expectancy. Don't forget DOS, Denial of Service, and HIDS and HIPS, Host-Based Intrusion Detection and Host-Based Intrusion Prevention. IPsec, which is IP Security. LDAP, Mandatory Access Control, MS-CHAP. Feel free to pause this nugget and jot these acronyms down, and then go up to your favorite online dictionary and make sure you have a general understanding of what these stand for. MTU, Maximum Transmission Unit. OVAL, as I explained, the Open Vulnerability Assessment Language. PKI, Public Key Infrastructure and Role-Based Access Control, also known as Rule-Based Access Control. And there's PII, Personally Identifiable Information. There's a bunch on this screen: SMIME, Secure Shell, TACACS, TCP/IP, VLAN, WEP and WEPA for wireless. Make sure that you have these defined before you go take the exam. With that being said, that wraps up and concludes this CBT Nugget for the CompTIA Security Plus exam. On behalf of myself, Michael Shannon, and the entire group at CBT Nuggets, again, we want to thank you for choosing us as your security training, and we wish you all the success, all the best in the world as you pursue your certification and professional career. Thank you, and take care.